All the promises that were made to Abraham flow directly to us Christians since Christ was his offspring. But to get to those promises, there are a few things that we need to do. Praise God, loves. My name is Lily. I create life experience and faith-based content in hopes that we will all live our lives through the verse. As I was reading Genesis chapter 13, a few prosperity lessons were revealed to me. And the first one is returning to God. Let's read Genesis chapter 3, verse 3 to 4. And he journeyed on from the Negev as far as Bethel, to a place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, for to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. In this chapter, Abram was promised land again. The first time it happened in chapter 12, but he went to Egypt. Of course, things did not work out and he had to come back to the promised land. On our prosperity journey, we tend to walk away from God, especially when things become hard. When famine hit, Abram decided to leave the promised land, going to Egypt. And that's exactly what we always do. We are not so different from him. We always think that the pastures are greener the other side. So we run for the alternatives. We try alchemy, divination, incarnation, sorcery, necromancy, you name it. But the good news is that the doors are always open for us to come back to our first love. And he is always so welcoming to us. And that's exactly what Abram did. He came back to the promised land and did exactly what he was supposed to do. And because of that, that's why as Christians today we are enjoying his promises. So I am asking you, please, think about your next generation by coming back to your first love. The second lesson is contention or disagreements are bound to happen. Let's read Genesis chapter 13, verse 7. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and Perizzites were dwelling in the land. I have a feeling that Lot and Abram had had disagreements before, but this was so heated. And you also notice that it happened right after Abram had come back to his first love, to the promised land. So I want you to know that as you are transitioning from whatever had replaced your first love, you are going to ruffle feathers with either your families, your co-workers, your friends. So be careful how you handle these disagreements, because the Canaanites and Perizzites are watching and they are waiting to see how you're going to handle yourself. And remember, it is your duty to bring them to Christ. So handle your business carefully. Which brings us to lesson number 3, generosity. Let's read Genesis chapter 13, verse 9. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I'll go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I'll go to the left. To prosper, you must be generous. And that's a big lesson we are learning from Abram. The land was promised to him, but he was willing to share it with Lot. By now, you must have prospered in some areas. It could be wisdom, knowledge, more so materialistic things. But are you willing to share those things with the world? Or you are waiting when you have everything, which by the way will never happen? And that brings us to lesson number 4. Is it 4 or 5? Maybe 4, which is faith. Let's read Genesis chapter 13, verse 10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Abram had faith that whatever Lot chose, God was going to make sure that he prospered. We serve a God of all possibilities. He makes water come out of rocks. All we need to do is trust him. Of course, Lot chose the Jordan Plains, which were fertile, but Abram stepped into prosperity by faith. Before, while he was in Egypt, he thought he had to look out for himself, and he ended up lying about who Sarah was. But this time, he trusted God. That's why he was able to practice the principle of love to Lord. And as kingdom wealth creators, we need to know if we are going to prosper in whatever thing that we are putting our eyes onto, we need to have faith. Step into that business with faith. Step into that class with faith. Step into that ministry with faith. And this brings us to lesson, okay, our last lesson. I don't remember how many lessons by now. Our last lesson is build yourself a godly altar. Let's read Genesis chapter 13, verse 18. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. I can't emphasize enough how important having a personal prayer altar on your journey to prosperity is. With the dichotomy of life, every Christian needs to secure their spiritual atmosphere at their homes or workplaces by building a prayer altar. Which reminds me, if you are a kingdom wealth creator, come fellowship with us every first Saturday of the month at Prayer Mountain Seguku Trumpet Center. See you soon.